The screens inside Next Tech Solutions Control Center glowed red, an all systems failure. Critical platforms for over 30 enterprise clients had gone dark. Emails bounced. Payment processors froze. Internal databases locked out. Engineers hovered in chaos, their voices layered in stress and jargon. Standing near the back, holding a thermal food bag, Amira Johnson watched the madness unfold. She wasn't supposed to be there more than 30 seconds. Drop the food, grab a tip, move on. That was the rhythm of survival when your mom's chemotherapy bills are taller than your rent notice. But something caught her eye. On the main monitor, an error code flickered. Familiar, almost laughably so. She tilted her head. Looks like a cache memory conflict, she said, half to herself. Silence. All heads turned. One of the engineers blinked. What did you say? She stepped closer. You tried rebooting the primary server without clearing the transaction buffer. That's why it's looping. Chuckles rippled through the room. Bryce Langford, NextTech's CTO, swiveled from his station. This isn't a microwave, miss. You don't fix a nationwide system crash with YouTube tutorials. Amira didn't flinch. Follow my suggestion. When it's back online in 2 minutes, remember this moment. Someone shrugged. Someone else typed. 120 seconds later, the screens turned green. She said nothing, just adjusted her bag and turned to leave. Lucky guess, Bryce muttered behind her. The laughter returned, louder this time, but something about the look in her eyes said this wasn't the end. It was the warning shot. 3 days. That was how long it took for Bryce Langford to turn wounded pride into quiet revenge. That on Monday, Amira Johnson was just another delivery girl with a name no one bothered to remember. By Thursday, she was a problem he could not forget. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. Arms folded, jaw tight. She made you look foolish, Ethan Sharp said, lounging on the leather couch, sipping company espresso. In front of your whole team. Bryce did not answer. Ethan smirked. I pulled her file. No degree. No tech background. Just 3 different delivery apps and a home address on the east side. Bryce turned. Get her blacklisted. Every platform. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That's aggressive, even for you. She disrespected this company, this department, and me. I will not have her parading around thinking she belongs in a world she clearly does not understand. And just like that, the order was given. By noon the next day, Amira received 3 cold, automated emails. Her delivery accounts were permanently suspended due to inappropriate conduct toward a client. No appeal, no explanation, just silence. She sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by a sea of unopened bills. On the counter, a bag of oranges sat untouched beside her mother's chemotherapy meds. Amira? Rosa Johnson's voice was weak from the bedroom. Did you make your deliveries today? Amira swallowed the lump in her throat. No, Mom. There was a problem. I will figure it out. But her hands trembled as she picked up her phone. There were no new jobs, no backup income, only stillness and pressure. Flashback. 2 years earlier, a young Amira, eyes burning with sleep deprivation, sat hunched over a second-hand laptop in a shared room with her mother. A cardboard box served as her desk. Online courses played quietly through broken speakers. She had just completed a simulation, route optimization using dynamic load balancing. Her professor had called it impressive. Then the funding dried up. Her mother's diagnosis came. The tuition invoice arrived. Something had to give. She gave up school, worked nights at a diner, mornings delivering groceries, evenings studying algorithms on a cracked screen. But no matter how hard she tried, no one in the tech world gave her more than a glance. Back in the present, Bryce leaned back in his leather chair. She will disappear now, he said with smug finality. Ethan laughed. People like her always do. They do not have the spine for real competition. The two clinked their coffee mugs, but what they did not know, what they could not imagine, was that Amira Johnson was not built to disappear. She was built to disrupt, because brilliance, once humiliated, does not vanish. IT transforms. That night, Amira stared at the suspension emails for the 10th time, and then, slowly, without saying a word, she reached under her bed and pulled out her old laptop. IT was scratched, slow, barely holding together. But as soon as she opened it, the glow off. The screen lit up her face with a quiet fire. She opened a blank file and began to type, not just out of desperation, not just out of necessity, but out of rage. Not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that calculates. Line by line, command by command, Amira began building something that no one at Next Tech could have dreamed of. Not a resume, not a job application, but a weapon, a system, a plan. Bryce Langford had taken her name off a delivery app. She was going to take his name out of the entire industry. And this time, when she came back, she would not knock. She would kick the door off its hinges. It was just past midnight when the message arrived. Layla Brooks, a cybersecurity engineer at Next Tech, stared at her screen in silence before finally clicking send. She had waited days, wrestling between job security and her conscience. But the arrogance she witnessed in the last team meeting had pushed her over the edge. The message was short. Hi, Amira. You don't know me, but I work at Next Tech. I saw what they did. I think you deserve the truth. Amira blinked at her phone, sitting at the chipped kitchen table with a mug of cold tea and her laptop humming. She hesitated. Another prank? A setup? But something in Layla's tone, unpolished, urgent, and human, felt real. She replied with one word. Talk. They met online that night, faces dimly lit on opposite sides of the city. Layla wasted no time. It was Bryce. He had you blacklisted, said you embarrassed him, that you needed to learn your place. Amira clenched her jaw. She had suspected, but hearing it spoken aloud hit harder than she expected. And there's more, Layla continued, lowering her voice. I've been flagging critical vulnerabilities in our infrastructure for months. He buried every report. Our clients are one breach away from collapse. Silence passed between them. Amira's screen reflected her eyes, focused, unflinching. Why? Are you telling me this? She finally asked. Because you saw something in 2 seconds that our entire team missed. Because you were the only person who stood in that room and actually understood what was wrong. And because people like him, they never stop unless someone makes them. Amira nodded slowly. Then let's give them a reason to remember my name. That night marked the beginning of something no one at Next Tech could see coming. Amira wiped her laptop screen clean and opened a new project file. She named it Blacklight. She was not just building a program. She was building a precision tool, part scanner, part auditor, part truth bomb. A vulnerability detection system so powerful it could expose every flaw Next Tech had hidden for years. Layla became her silent informant, forwarding system logs and sanitized metadata through encrypted channels. Amira sifted through them like a surgeon, cutting through layers of negligence and arrogance. One by one, she mapped the weaknesses Bryce had. Pretended did not exist. By day, Amira filled out job applications she knew would be rejected. The moment she checked the no degree box, the offers disappeared. She walked into interviews wearing borrowed shoes and hope, only to leave with fake smiles and empty promises. But by night, she transformed. Every keyboard tap echoed with purpose. Thousands of lines of code spilled from her fingertips. Her software did not just identify vulnerabilities, it organized them, ranked them, visualized them in dynamic models. She tested it against open-source frameworks, refining the detection engine until it was airtight. Her alias was simple, A.J, secure. Under this pseudonym, she began sending anonymous reports to CTOs of companies that relied on Next Tech software. Each message included a sample audit, clean and professional, with her findings laid out with surgical clarity. No cost. No strings. Just a tip from someone who believes your systems deserve better protection than what you paid for. At first, there was silence, then curiosity, then panic. One CTO responded, then 3, then 5. Amira's inbox started to fill. Quiet acknowledgments, questions, requests for deeper analysis. She never mentioned Next Tech by name, but the flaws always led back to them. Meanwhile, at home, Amira Johnson began noticing the shift. Her daughter, once frantic and exhausted from long shifts, now sat quietly at her laptop for hours, shoulders tense, eyes locked in silent determination. You haven't slept, Rosa said one morning, setting a bowl of oatmeal next to her. What are you building? Amira looked up, tired but unbroken. Something that will change our lives, Mom. For good. Rosa sat down beside her. Just promise me you're not hurting yourself doing it. Amira reached out and gently took her hand. No, Mama. I'm just finally fighting back. Outside, the world went on as usual. Inside, a revolution was taking shape, one keystroke at a time. And in the high-rise offices of Nextech Solutions, Bryce Langford still believed he had crushed a problem before it could grow that he did not realize. That problem had become a threat, and that threat was watching him, coding in silence, calculating her next move. It started with a phone call, then another, and another. At by noon, Bryce Langford's desk was covered in urgent memos. His phone would not stop ringing, and every call brought the same bad news. Clients were leaving, not one or two, but 7 in a single day. Each one mentioned the same thing: a free audit report from someone named K. Williams, exposing dangerous flaws in the systems Nextech had built. Flaws Bryce had claimed did not exist. At first, he thought it was a joke. But when Dataforge Industries, one of their largest clients, canceled a multi-million-dollar contract, panic set in. "You told us these vulnerabilities were patched," the Dataforge CTO said on the phone. "But this report proves you have known about them for months." "That's not possible," Bryce stammered. "Who even is this?" "K. Williams." There was a pause. She included full log access, error timestamps, line-by-line breakdowns. "Either fix this now, or we're taking legal action." The call ended. Bryce sat frozen, cold sweat on his neck. How could a consultant, who did not even exist in their official vendor database, have access to internal Nextech logs? He would get his answer minutes later. The all-company email pinged inboxes across the building. The subject line read, "Integrity and truth, what you deserve to know." It was from Layla Brooks, and it blew the door wide open. In the email, Layla explained how Amira Johnson, a former food delivery worker, had spotted in seconds what 20 Nextech engineers failed to solve in 3 hours. She shared how Bryce, feeling embarrassed, used his power to blacklist Amira from all delivery platforms, ruining her income out of spite. The email included screenshots, meeting logs, and a voice recording. Bryce, openly bragging about teaching a poor delivery girl her place. In less than an hour, the email had gone viral. Tech blogs reposted it. Cybersecurity influencers began quoting it. Within 2 hours, local news outlets were reporting on the scandal, naming names, showing faces to Nextech HQ. Silence fell over every hallway. People stopped working. Engineers stared at their screens, shocked. Employees whispered in corners. And then, just when things could not get worse for Bryce, she walked in. Amira Johnson stepped into the Nextech lobby, calm and composed, dressed in a clean white blazer and jeans. By her side was a lawyer. Behind her, 2 journalists carried cameras and notepads. Security tried to stop her. She handed them a letter. "I've been appointed by the Nextech Board of Directors," she said calmly, "to conduct a full security audit. Effective immediately." The guards stepped aside. Inside the office, Bryce looked up and froze. Amira stood in the doorway like a storm in human form. "You said I couldn't audit your system," she said softly. "Funny, because I've already done it." She opened her laptop, connected it to the conference screen, and clicked. Rows of code appeared. Error logs, data charts, timestamped failures. And one by one, she showed them 23 critical flaws. "Each one could have been prevented," she explained, "with just basic review. But you ignored every warning." Bryce tried to speak, but her lawyer raised a hand. "Mr. Langford, you are currently under internal investigation for racial discrimination, defamation, and abuse of corporate power. You may want to stay silent." The journalists turned their cameras on him. A reporter asked, "Mr. Langford, do you deny using your position to destroy Ms. Johnson's livelihood after she corrected you publicly?" Bryce looked around. No one came to his defense. Ethan, who had once laughed at Amira's courage, was nowhere to be seen. Layla stood proudly beside Amira. Employees peered from behind glass walls, silent witnesses to justice in motion. "Your arrogance," Amira continued, "cost this company millions. But worse, it cost innocent people their trust. You turned a technical mistake into a personal attack." She closed her laptop gently. "Now, I'm here to fix what you broke." Bryce sat down slowly, the weight of the moment crushing the last of his pride. For the first time in his career, he had nothing to say. His empire of ego was crumbling, right in front of the girl he once tried to erase. And she was not done yet. The conference room was silent. Bryce Langford sat slumped in his chair, pale and shaken, surrounded by the very engineers who had once followed his lead without question. Now, Not one of them would meet his eyes. He looked across the room at Amira Johnson, standing tall in the same space where he had once humiliated her. His voice cracked as he finally asked, "Why did you not just walk away?" Amira paused. She had been asked that question before by friends, by her mother, even by herself on the hardest nights when exhaustion made quitting look like peace. But now, standing in the heart of the empire that once tried to bury her, her answer was steady. "I did not walk away," she said, "because competence does not have a color. It does not have a class. And people like you, people with power but no perspective, you only listen when the pain becomes public." Her words landed with the weight of truth. The reporters captured every syllable. The Next Tech employees watched with quiet awe. Bryce lowered his gaze. "I did not come back to get even," Amira continued. "I came back to make sure no one else gets erased the way you tried to erase me." Then she turned to Layla and gave a simple nod. Layla nodded back. They both understood this was not the end of something. It was the beginning. Amira left that building not as a former delivery worker, not as a disgraced applicant. She walked out as the CEO of Secure Code Solutions, a cybersecurity firm already signing contracts with companies that once belonged to Nextech's portfolio. Her name was on the lips of every CTO who had once overlooked her. Her software was now protecting systems she was once forbidden to touch. Later that day, Layla Brooks handed in her resignation and joined Amira's team as Director of Technical Strategy. She said it was the easiest decision she had ever made. As for Bryce, he was officially terminated the next morning. By the end of the week, he was facing legal action from multiple clients, employee complaints, and internal ethics charges. No one defended him. No one offered him a second chance. He had built his entire career on the belief that power made him untouchable, but now he was learning, too late, that integrity outlasts influence, and that underestimating the wrong person can cost you everything. 6 months had passed. From a tiny corner of her bedroom where it all began, Amira Johnson now sat in a sunlit office on the 21st floor of a glass tower downtown. The plaque on her door read, "Founder and CEO, Secure Code Solutions." What started as an act of survival had grown into a company of 45 employees, 17 active clients, and a reputation that was reshaping the cybersecurity industry. 3 of those clients had once been loyal to Nextech. Now, they were proudly displaying Amira's badge on their websites. The world had changed, and so had she. That morning, Rosa Johnson, now walking with steady strength, entered the office holding 2 cups of coffee. Her face was brighter. Her voice was stronger. The treatments had worked. The stress was gone. "You look like a boss," Rosa said, smiling as she handed Amira a mug. "I am one," Amira replied with a grin, sipping slowly. Her phone buzzed with a new email. She glanced at the subject line and froze for just a second. Invitation. National Technology Conference. Keynote speaker request. It was the same event where Bryce Langford had once delivered opening speeches every year. The same stage where he once stood tall, dripping in arrogance and applause. Now, he was not even on the guest list. Amira leaned back in her chair, processing the moment, not with pride, but with peace. She had made it. Not in spite of what happened. Because of it, she clicked accept. Meanwhile, across town, Bryce was checking his own inbox, filled with rejection letters. His apartment was small, dark, and silent. He had sold his luxury condo months ago to pay off legal bills. His bank account was nearly empty. His resume, once golden, now meant nothing. No company wanted the man behind that viral recording. He could not erase what the world had heard. He had sabotaged a young black woman's career out of ego. And in return, she had built a legacy. At the tech conference weeks later, the crowd stood in silence as Amira Johnson took the stage. No spotlight could outshine her presence. "No one in that room looked like me," she said, remembering the day she walked into Nextech with a lunch bag and left with a revolution in her mind. "But real innovation," she told the crowd, "begins when we stop judging people by their uniforms, by their backgrounds, by their accents, and start listening to brilliance wherever it lives." Her closing words were quiet, but unforgettable. The best revenge is never destruction. It is building something so extraordinary that the people who tried to shrink you finally realize how small they were all along. The room erupted in applause. And somewhere in a forgotten corner of the city, Bryce Langford sat alone, watching the speech replay on a cracked laptop. Justice had spoken, not with anger, but with excellence.